Welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of Fair Territory on Thanksgiving week. And we have, as always in baseball, a lot to talk about. We've got a big trade. We've got a reliever who might become a starter as a free agent. And we've got a story that I wrote today with Evan Drellick that I want to dive deeper into. It's about the Pirates and the Marlins and their sudden willingness to spend. But first, the big news from Sunday, the trade. You saw it, you know about it, you've probably debated it in your head right now. And we're going to try to help clarify some things this morning, try to help people understand this trade. We're all trying to understand it ourselves, right? So the trade was this: Marcus Semien from the Texas Rangers to the New York Mets for Brandon Nimmo. Two big names there. You see the players involved. Nimmo had to waive his no-trade clause for this to happen, and that was the final step in this thing. The Mets sent the Rangers $5 million because the difference in salaries or guaranteed money that they are owed is about $30 million. I was surprised that the money was only $5 million going from the Mets to the Rangers. I thought it would be more balanced than that. And the Rangers also get Nimmo, with Nimmo getting from the Mets a $1 million assignment bonus that was in his contract. Now, Nimmo has 5 years left, Semien 3, and that's why there is a difference in the amount of money they're getting. The Rangers actually will save money in the first couple of years of this deal because Nimmo is making less than Semien is, at least according to the contract. I don't know how the $5 million is being distributed, but it's not all that consequential. The Rangers save in the first 2 years, but then, of course, in the third year, the salaries are roughly the same. And then in years 4 and 5, Semien is off the books for the Mets, and Nimmo has 2 more years left at $20.5 million. So from that perspective alone, it's an interesting deal. Now, these are big names. There's no question about it. Brandon Nimmo, a career-long Met. Marcus Semien signed a huge free agent contract with the Rangers a few years back, helped the Rangers win the 2023 World Series. But I want to show you now a tweet, an X post from Mike Petriello of MLB.com, and this is one that I agree with. Mike said, the initial feeling is this trade matters a ton, name value, and also maybe not all that much 2026 on baseball value. And what Mike is talking about is that these are not two players in the primes of their career. Nimmo's still quite productive offensively, not the defender he once was. Semien has gone backwards in a big way the last 2 years offensively, did win a Gold Glove at second base, and as we will discuss, that is a big deal for the Mets. Now, let's talk about the Mets a little bit here. This is a team that from the start of the offseason has signaled, David Stearns, their president of baseball operations, has signaled they want to improve their run prevention. As I mentioned, Nimmo not quite as good in the outfield as he once was. He's still adequate, but he's not a plus defender. Semien is a plus defender at second base, and that will help the Mets undoubtedly as long as he maintains that. And he's 35 years old. There's no guarantee he's going to be that good at 36, 37, and 38. But Marcus Semien is a guy who keeps himself in amazing shape. He plays all the time, every day, one of the most durable players in the game. So there's a reasonable expectation that defensively he will be good. Now, Nimmo was a valuable Met, a guy who was there from the time he was drafted, a former first-round pick. And look at his ranks all time among the Mets. 9th in home runs, 4th in walks, 8th in on base, 9th in extra base hits, 6th in runs scored, 9th in plate appearances. That's an amazing run with a team. And what this deal shows, as Will Salmon of The Athletic wrote today in a very perceptive column, is that David Stearns, as president of baseball operations, is not going to be necessarily swayed by sentiment as he redoes this team, and nor should he be. The Mets, in case you missed it, had a really disappointing year. They missed the playoffs. They had no business missing the playoffs. They were one of the best teams. Actually, they were the best team in baseball as of about June 10th. And then they fell apart. Their pitching fell apart most notably, but in general, they just collapsed. They were passed by the Cincinnati Reds for the final wild card spot. And this is a season that was frankly one of their more embarrassing, and they've had some embarrassing seasons in the past. So what are they doing here? With Semien, as we said, they're trying to get better defensively. They're also getting more right-handed in their lineup. That's important for them. The question now is, what's next? How far does Stearns go? Now, if they're not going to be swayed by sentiment, Perhaps they'll be more willing to part with Pete Alonso. Perhaps they'll be more willing to part with Edwin Diaz. Those players are more valuable than Nimmo was, as Will points out in his column. So they're a little bit different. They're a different equation. But at the same time, if the price for Diaz gets beyond the Mets' comfort level, I would expect he goes and they sign another closer. Alonso is a whole nother drama. We saw that last year, and it's going to be the same kind of drama this year. We'll see who wants to pay him. Now, from the Rangers' perspective, this deal also is interesting, and it kind of has the same overtones. Again, this is a deal born out of frustration by both clubs. The Mets frustrated with what happened last year. The Rangers frustrated by their own failures since the 2023 World Series title. The Rangers are looking to change their mix. They're also cutting payroll. We saw that. They non-tendered Adolis Garcia, they non-tendered Jonah Heim, and now they're purging Semien. But it's not all about payroll. This is a team that underachieved for what their names were on paper offensively. And this is a team that determined, quite obviously, that they needed to change up their mix. Nimmo should be better offensively for them than Semien was. They'll figure out second base and they'll go forward here. But this is a clear sign that the Rangers are not sitting on their laurels from 2023. No, they're not pleased with what has happened here. They've kind of fallen apart too. Maybe not as dramatically as the Mets, but certainly in a big way. So the Rangers changing the mix, getting better offensively, and of course, saving a little bit of money, a considerable amount of money in the first 2 years of this deal on top of the Adolis Garcia and Jonah Heim non-tenders. That allows them to go forward now in free agency and maybe do some things. Same thing with the Mets. The question is, will they be able to do some more things now that Nimmo is gone? It opens their roster up, yes, and it makes them more flexible. Does it make them that much more flexible financially? Not in years 1 and 2, because Semien is making more than Nimmo was, but we'll see how Steve Cohen handles that, whether Kyle Tucker becomes a factor for the Mets, whether Cody Bellinger becomes a factor as well. All right, for more on this deal, Mets Up, our podcast here on the Fair Territory Network, or the Foul Territory Network. Hosts James Ciano and Mark Luino have an emergency show out now. Watch on YouTube and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Mets Up and the entire Foul Territory Network. Sorry, AJ, I called it the Fair Territory Network. I apologize. It's the Foul Territory Network. All right, moving on. Now, we reported another story yesterday in The Athletic that not nearly as interesting as the Semien Nimmo trade, but interesting in its own right. Ryan Helsley, free agent reliever who was with the Mets for the latter part of last season, is getting interest from the Tigers and other teams as a starting pitcher. Helsley as a starting pitcher. Now, we've seen this play out before, right? Seth Lugo, Michael King, Clay Holmes. They're among the pitchers just in recent years, and only a few, who have made the transition from the bullpen to the rotation, and all of them have been actually quite successful at it. Now, with Helsley, what is not known is his desire to actually do this, to start. And if he doesn't have that desire and he prefers to be a reliever, thinks he can be more successful that way, then most likely he will choose a relief role. But starters generally get paid more than relievers. And obviously, in his first crack at free agency, he's looking for the best deal possible. He wants to put himself and his family in the best position possible. So we'll see how this plays out. Helsley has been a two-pitch guy, really. Slider, fastball. He's got a curveball, kind of developed a cutter last year. But teams are obviously seeing and identifying that those pitches, the cutter, the curve, can be assets to him as well, and that he can be a 3, 4, 5 pitch guy going forward. That's what's intriguing teams about Helsley. So the Tigers are in an interesting spot. Remember, Jack Flaherty opted back in. He's back for $20 million. They've got Skubal, they've got Casey Mize, they've got Troy Melton. But they declined the option on Jose Urquidy. They're going to be without Jackson Jobe and probably Reese Olson for at least for the start of the season because of injuries. So they have an opening still in their rotation. And in Skubal's final year, they're obviously going to want to be as strong as possible. Maybe they see Helsley as kind of a final piece to that rotation. Don't know the other teams involved here with Ryan Helsley as a starter, but again, if it's one team thinking that way, it's probably not only one team, because teams with the analytics and the numbers that they look at, the under the hood stuff, they see things that most of us casual observers don't. Some in the baseball media who are technically and analytically savvy do pick up on these things. Saris, Mike Petriello, those guys see it sometimes. But a guy like me, not usually. So the teams are smart. Those writers are smart. And we'll see how this plays out for Helsley in free agency. So with that, we go forward. And in case you missed it, Helsley joined Jim Hayes and Kyle Gibson recently on Cardinal territory. Catch up on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and rate 5 stars to the entire Foul Territory Network. AJ Przinsky will thank you. We'll be back with the Inside Dish after this.
Hey, for all the parents out there with teens, it's more hectic now than ever.
Cash App's going to help, not hurt.
With the Cash App card, available to teens 13 to 17 with sponsorship by an eligible parent or guardian, every transaction triggers a real-time notification for you to see, empowering your teen to practice independence while giving you peace of mind by keeping track of their spending. You can also manage everything directly from your own Cash App account without having to switch between the two. With the Cash App card, you and your teen's balances receive 24/7 fraud monitoring, and if something ever feels off, you have the ability to lock their card right from your phone in just one tap. For a limited time, new Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code FAMILY10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partner. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Direct deposit and promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures.
Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk maybe about a story I've written, a trend in the game, something else going on. This is the part where we go a little deeper. Now, I wrote a lengthy story today with Evan Drellich, and that story is going to be the subject of the Inside Dish today. It was about the Pirates and Marlins and their sudden willingness to spend. Now, I first heard about this at the GM meetings and reported on it at the time. And I said at the time, believe it when you see it. But at the GM meetings, player agents were telling me, yeah, they're getting interest in their clients from the Pirates and Marlins, unexpected interest. And this has played out now to some extent. You see the story there. The Pirates and Marlins have a sudden willingness to spend. Here's what could be behind it with Evan Drellich. So the Pirates expressed interest in Josh Naylor before he signed with the Seattle Mariners, 5 years, $92.5 million. Never made an offer because it happened so quickly. They never really got the chance to make an offer. Naylor wanted to go to Seattle. The Pirates also are showing interest in Kyle Schwarber, who would be a perfect fit given that he's left-handed. PNC Park plays well for left-handed hitters. He's a leader. The Pirates could use that, all of that. But they're also showing interest in Jorge Polanco, Ryan O'Hearn, and Kazuma Okamoto, the Japanese slugger, because, frankly, those are more realistic options than Schwarber will be. Schwarber is a guy who is going to get interest and is getting interest from a number of contenders, including his former team, the Philadelphia Phillies. If you have a better option, you're probably not signing with the Pirates or the Marlins. And yet the Marlins, too, have been active in ways that are unexpected, to say the least. The Marlins are looking at the closers, not Edwin Diaz perhaps, but some on the next tier, Ryan Helsley, Devin Williams, those kinds of guys. And they also have talked with Michael King and are talking with Michael King and other starting pitchers to supplement what they have, to double down on the strength of their rotation, not tear it apart by trading Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera. They could do that, but again, they are talking to other starting pitchers as well, and they're also considering upgrades at first and third base. All this is in the story. So the obvious question here, the question that a fan should ask, and it's the question we're asking in the story. Why now? Why are these teams suddenly waking up? Both teams are perennially bottom 5 payroll clubs. There are maybe a couple of years where they jump out to 23rd or 22nd, but they're usually in the bottom 5. Both teams have been the subject of grievances from the Players Association in the past, and the Marlins are potentially at risk of prompting another for their lack of spending on Major League payroll in 2025. The story details how teams are not required by the CBA, but if they don't reach a certain threshold with their luxury tax payroll, then they open up the chance of a grievance. It's all in the story. It's a little detailed, but We've explained it. I've written about this before with regard to the A's. They held off this possibility because they increased their payroll. And I wrote about it last spring with the Marlins. And then they had a season in which they hardly spent at all and yet jumped from 62 to 79 wins, which in their minds might say, or might be a justification for doing exactly what they've done, building up their infrastructure and not spending as much, at least at this point, on Major League payroll. But there are other things perhaps at work here as well. And I want to show you a quote that we used in the story from the agent Seth Levinson, Seth of the Aces agency. And what Seth said was kind of interesting, and it's not simply his sentiment. I've heard this from other agents as well. There is a possibility of a fight among clubs over revenue sharing, with the smaller markets seeking a greater contribution. This is what Levinson said. The payers, the large market clubs, will argue that insufficient revenue sharing funds are being spent on player acquisition. Hence, it wouldn't be a surprise if the smaller markets compete for talent in the free agent market to convince the payors that they are committed to putting a better product on the field. Why will they want to do that? Because if they do that, then maybe they can ask for even more in revenue sharing than they're getting now. The estimates that we've heard over the years for the Pirates, not as much as the Marlins and the A's, but the Marlins and A's are two leading teams. And what we've reported is that they've been getting at least $70 million. We've reported that in the past, $70 million a year. Now, if there is, and we're playing hypotheticals here, but that's kind of what we do. If there is a salary cap and a salary floor in the next agreement, then revenue sharing changes dramatically. And what Seth Levinson was saying doesn't really apply. So maybe the teams are more focused on that because, of course, the owners want the salary cap, and maybe the revenue sharing aspect, the desire to prove to the big market teams that, hey, we're going to spend the money as we are supposed to spend it in the CBA. Maybe that's not a big part of it. What the teams will tell you, and what they did tell us for the story, is that this is simply a matter of opportunity. The Pirates, with Paul Skeens remaining for 4 years under club control, they need to get busy. They've already wasted 2 years with Skeen under club control, and he's won Rookie of the Year and the Cy Young Award. Now, 4 more years. If you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? And the Marlins, under their first season with Clayton McCullough, jumping from 62 to 79 wins, as I mentioned, knocking the Mets out of the playoffs, doing a really good job, especially in the second half, they say, or at least they believe, well, now is the time we can go forward and spend a little bit more. Well, will it even happen? That's the question here. Will these teams get these players? They're going to have to probably overpay to get some of them. They're going to be last options for a number of them because teams and players, well, when they reach free agent marriages, players who are quality players generally want to go with certain contenders. The Marlins might be close to that. The Pirates can argue that they're that with Skeens and their younger starters, and with Connor Griffin coming, top prospect. But I'm not sure Kyle Schwarber would buy that argument against, say, the Philadelphia Phillies, right? So some do doubt that these teams are actually going to spend. And the bigger question, the looming question here, with a cap and floor system possible, and it is possible if the owners want it. I don't believe it's going to happen, and I don't believe it should happen, but it's possible. If that happens, and then a floor is implemented, will owners like the Pirates' Bob Nutting and the Marlins' Bruce Sherman even be able to survive? Will they be able to raise their payroll to the floor, which could be, I don't know, 120, 130 million, well beyond where they've been in recent years? Or will they have to sell their teams? That's a good question. Now, whatever is compelling these two clubs, whatever's persuading the Pirates and Marlins to take this more aggressive approach with regard to their payrolls, with regard to spending, it's a departure. It's something different than what they've done before. And as we conclude this story, and as I conclude this segment of the podcast, this is the issue. The future of both franchises, it might hinge on the results of what they do. It might depend on how they fare this offseason and how, of course, the CBA turns out once this is negotiated. And remember, the CBA expires after next season, December 1st, 2026. So that's the question. Will the Pirates and Marlins spend? And if so, to what end? We'll be back with Grillin Ken right after this.
Kratz, we picked you to talk about MeUndies, not just because they're ridiculously comfortable, but also because they are very festive. When the holiday season hits, you go on the website and there are just so many more designs to check out. And they just scream Eric Kratz getting little matching sets with everybody that he knows.
You know what? They're called MeUndies, not UUndies. So you go in and you say, this one's for me. This set is for me. This is what is good for me. Not UUndies, MeUndies. A lot of different ones to choose from.
I'm so confused, but what I do know is that you can knock out all of your holiday gifting needs today with MeUndies, and to get the exclusive holiday deals up to 50% off, MeUndies.com/foul. Enter promo code FOUL. That's MeUndies.com/FOUL. Promo code is FOUL for up to 50% off. Matching holiday prints with your person? You can't beat that. BetMGM account holders, today, how about an any sport parlay boost token? You can score a bigger payout if your wager with that token hits. Tokens can be used on parlays and on same game parlays. Gambling problem or concern? There's help. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where I answer your questions. Let's get right to them. First question comes from Tyler McSmith, who asks, which do you think is more likely? The Braves start Dubon at shortstop, Mauricio Dubon, and spend on their DH, or will they still pursue another shortstop and have Dubon stay a utility player? Perfect world, they get another shortstop. It's just going to be difficult to do that. As I wrote last week, we talked about this on Fair and Foul Territory. Mauricio Dubon is a floor for them. He is at least a guy who can cover the position if they do not get someone else. And the problem is, outside of Ha-Seong Kim, there really isn't a quality shortstop available. Yes, Bo Bichette has played shortstop, but teams generally don't view him as the future at that position. They view his future at more as second base or at third base. So, yeah, the Braves will hang around, try to see what happens with Kim, monitor his market, and perhaps jump in if an opportunity arises. But in the end, to get more offense, yes, they might end up spending on the DH spot more so than the shortstop spot. DH has been occupied for them for the last couple of years by Marcell Ozuna. Marcell Ozuna is a guy who has been productive, highly productive at times for the Braves, not so productive last year. There are plenty of DH types available, and yeah, the Braves can certainly swim in those waters. Remember, their chairman, Terry McGuirk, has said they have every ability to be a top 5 payroll team again. Well, let's see what happens this offseason. All right, next question. This one comes from Rarities, who asked, do you see the Rangers going after Bo Bichette or Arise now that Semien is traded, or do you see them playing Cody Freeman, Duran, or Josh Smith at second base? Good questions. Now, the Rangers certainly want to improve their offense. So the players you mentioned could be possibilities, and Bo Bichette would fit for them at either third or second base. Josh Young, not certain to return at third. Luis Arise is a controversial player, of course, in terms of what he does. He is the leading contact man in the sport, but he doesn't hit for power. He doesn't play much defense. I'm not sure the Rangers will see him as an answer. They might. But the Rangers also have pitching needs, especially in their bullpen. So they're going to look to do some things now, I would expect, especially with the savings over the next couple of years on the Semien Nimmo exchange and the non-tenders of Adolis Garcia and Jonah Heim. Just remains to be seen what exactly they do. All right, next question. Let's see if we have another one here. This one comes from Jonathan W. 1821. Do you think that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to make a move soon? I don't know how soon it's going to be. And it's always difficult, Jonathan, to predict the pace of an offseason. And it's also difficult to predict what might happen. The Semien Nimmo trade came out of nowhere, as deals and transactions so often do. So with Toronto, their hands are in a lot of things. Now, I have not heard them as strongly on Kyle Tucker as some others have reported. Certainly, I have heard them in the starting pitching market and the closer market. They're on all the big-time closers, including Edwin Diaz. They're on all the big starting pitchers as well. That is where I expect their focus to be. And I expect them at some point to do some pretty major things. I just don't know how quickly it's all going to happen. Generally speaking, we've got the Thanksgiving holiday in America coming up, and teams will take a couple of days to kind of gather themselves. There could be some movement over the holiday. It's happened before. And then leading into the winter meetings early in December and during the winter meetings, that's when the action really gets heavy. All right, I want to thank everyone for watching, for listening. Foul Territory is coming up. Jim Bowden, Robert Murray, and Marty Caswell join Todd Frazier, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun. Fair Territory returns Wednesday with Alana Rizzo and myself, 12:30 Eastern. Wednesday this week, not on Thanksgiving, 12:30 Eastern. We'll talk to you then.